want to play a quick video, and I think it's about 1 minute, just to give you the context of everything.
Here he comes.
Last flights on rebel position.
Okay, so I'm sorry if that didn't lift any spirits here, but I just wanted to set the context of getting into the idea of how we are so far away from the ongoing crisis in Syria and why this matters to me. And that's why I'll spend a bit of my presentation just going over why I care about this. So I will briefly talk about this. So this involves Rory actually. So after a band concert, I was being driven home by Rory's mom, and his little sister was sitting in the back, and Rory's mom asked me, like, do you want to explain what the Syrian crisis is to Vanessa? And I turned around and I explained in the most simplest terms ever, and it made me tear up a little bit. And I said, these Syrians and these refugees are people just like us, who had lives, just like us, who went to work, who went to school, but now they've lost their families, they've lost their homes, and now there are bullies out there who want to stand in the way of the door to prevent them from coming in to find safety and shelter. So these people are just like us, right? And they are experiencing a grave journey to Europe to find safety. But as I said earlier, there are people who want to stand in the way of that out of fear and anger. But honestly, I can't blame them either, because they have given up hope on their politicians, they have given up hope in the media, and they have given up hope in humanity itself. And that's why they are, out of anger, they are trying to prevent these people from entering their countries, preventing their own country to help these people in need. So many people believe that a solution to the Syrian refugee crisis is by tightening borders or, say, bombing the places where they're coming from. But in reality, that isn't necessarily the solution. So, in the end, what is the solution, or what alternatives can we identify? Through my research, I looked at a continent that suffered great civil wars, that suffered great conflict well into the 20th century, and I looked at Africa. And in my research, I identified these sustainable refugee camps that was able to provide jobs to these refugees, and also teaching them green practices to ensure that they mitigate their carbon footprint in the places that they stay. Now, this has actually led me to my research question. How can economic and political sustainability be utilized in Syrian refugee camps to ensure stability in the European Union? So essentially what I intend to do is to take the principles of what I researched regarding refugee camps in Africa and see how that can be applied and modified in dealing with the refugee crisis in Europe. So through my research, I will look at two case studies. One would be Germany and the next would be Greece. And I'll explain briefly why. See, Germany is the country that accepts the highest amount of refugees, but is also the most developed economy in the European Union. Greece, on the other hand, as we know, has suffered greatly from economic implications, and yet also accept a large amount of refugees because they are right on the border between the Mediterranean and where the refugees enter. So I won't be conducting a survey or any of those kinds because that is too difficult for me to be on the ground and ask Syrian refugees, their experiences and how they feel about the crisis. So in the end, I settled with a meta-analysis, but based on suggestions from my advisors. So I will look at two aspects: economic impact and social impact. And as listed here, these are the possible sources that I will look into. And I've already explored this through two observational studies, in fact. One based on the one that we did previously, but also one I did for my AT proposal. So what I did for my AT proposal was looking at environmental carbon emissions and also the number of refugees per European country. And I noticed that the correlation is very high, which suggested that refugees did have some degree of environmental impact in the places that they entered. So in the end, what I realized was that refugees are actually the solution to the very problems that they're causing. They will actually bring great growth and can help spur the economies in Europe. So looking at these two graphs from World Finance and the Economist, this line shows the number of declining working age population if refugees do not get integrated into society. On the other hand, this shows that if refugees are integrated, how the working age population will be affected. This actually shows that refugees do have a degree of benefits if they are integrated into society, which is exactly what I will be trying to investigate, if that is true. So social-wise, this is a Pew Research poll that looked at how people responded to Muslims and their perception of Muslims, but I will just briefly skim over that. So in the end, what is the significance of my research? I want to find a solution to this growing issue. The solution isn't closing our borders, the solution isn't bombing them even more, but rather how can we integrate them into society and allow them to be productive citizens just like us, as they were in their little countries. Challenges and implications. I believe that challenges and implications rely mostly on finding the exact and right data. Because I'm doing a meta-analysis, I'll be gathering data from a bunch of sources, and that can serve as a challenge, but also might actually be beneficial to me because I'll be looking at the bigger picture and the bigger scope of the issue. Now, implication-wise, I think my biases might play a role in this, but also looking at the fact that I'll be analyzing the European Union as a non-citizen of the European Union, it might actually also lead to further biases. But in the end, to summarize everything, back to the story about how I was in Rory's car. The reason why I care about this is because I don't want to share that exact same story as I did with Vanessa. I don't want to tell my children that these people have suffered and that these people are dying, and that I want to tell my children that the world was able to solve this issue. So with that, I yield my time to any questions. Yeah.